Hey, everybody, welcome in. It is a Monday edition of the Utopia Football Podcast. As I check and make sure my levels are all good to go. Yep, there we are. I'm Sean Pendergast, one half of Payne and Pendergast, Sports Radio 610. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, you can see I'm in the Sports Radio 610 studio right now. Just got done doing our Monday show, Payne and Pendergast, and wanted to get an episode out to you guys following up on everything that happened this weekend with the Texans, the game on Friday against the Steelers, the night practice on Sunday evening last night, and all the different news items surrounding the team right now. So wanted to drop you guys a few minutes on that. Of course, there will be a mailbag episode tomorrow, and a reminder that if you, first a reminder to subscribe to the podcast, first and foremost. If you haven't subscribed yet, we're almost halfway. We are halfway through the preseason now. We're less than a month away from the regular season opener. Subscribe. You're going to get plenty of content, plenty of insight. I'm going to be at all the practices. You'll get multiple practice reports this week. You'll get a mailbag episode tomorrow, and you'll get a preview of the Rams game coming up later this week, all just by hitting that subscribe button. So hit the subscribe button, rate it, review it, and really appreciate when you guys do that. A reminder as well that the mailbag episode, if you're getting this on Monday, I'm not recording the mailbag until Tuesday. So if you want to get me an email, if you haven't already, houmailbag@gmail.com, houmailbag@gmail.com to send an email to the podcast. And it can be, we talk by and large Texans on here, but anything NFL related. The Astros are getting down the stretch here. I'll always mix in an Astro question if it's a good one. houmailbag@gmail.com. So the things I want to accomplish today with you, I feel like a professor. Here are the things we're going to accomplish today, class. I want to talk about just some brief hits on the practice last night. Texans back in town. Obviously, I did not have eyes on any of the practices up in Ohio. It sounds like it was very productive work they got done up there. But last night they had their first and only I'll call it a night practice. It certainly didn't feel like night out there. It started at 5:30. They finished up around 7 o'clock, hotter than Hades out there. Before I give you any observations or news on what happened out there, shout out to everybody who came out to that thing. And especially, and I'm talking to season ticket holders and fans, especially the people that lined up literally hours before. Man, it's one thing to line up hours before at 4 a.m. when it's dark outside and it's relatively cool. It's a completely different thing to be lined up in 98-degree heat with no shade, except for some of you that brought umbrellas. That was pretty smart. But, man, the line, if you haven't been out to any of these practices, the lines have been crazy. But yesterday, as I'm coming down Merworth from Maine, down Merworth to park in the media lot, which is right next to the practice bubble, the line to get in was crazy. It was like the entrance is on the north side of Merworth at the corner of Kirby and Merworth. So the line starts there. So the line crosses the street, crosses Merworth at Kirby, and then turns and goes up Merworth an entire block, like the whole length of, I think it's the green lot right there, and then turns the corner and starts heading south again, parallel to Kirby. My description may be a little confusing. Just know it's a really long line of people waiting to get in and see this team. And what I've loved about this training camp is at most of the practices, you can see what people are so excited about. It's been, I don't want to say it's been completely back and forth. There was a period of time late in the practices like 7 through 10, the last 4 practices they had in Houston before the Hall of Fame game, where the defense kind of dominated. But the offense seems to have gotten its groove back a little bit, and C.J. Stroud looked really, really good at practice last night. He put on a show. He was hitting Nico. He was hitting Tank. Cade Stover was getting some run with CJ and making plays, which was really good to see. I think this team's still having a hard time running the ball, and we're going to get into that when we do our winners and losers from the Texans and the Steelers game. Which I know that game was a couple days ago, but I think a lot of the winners and losers stuff plays into position battles that are going on with this team right now. There are some fascinating position battles going on with this team right now that we'll get into in just a minute. But practice last night, very crisp. Offense looked good. Defense had its moments. And I think the big thing, Laramie Tunsil back in uniform, not just in uniform, but back and working in 11-on-11 drills. Because Joe Mixon was back, suited up as well, and did a lot of the individual drills. But Joe Mixon did not participate in team drills. I don't know how necessary it is for Joe Mixon to participate in team drills, even though this is a new team for him. It's probably more necessary right now that the Texans figure out what's going on behind Joe Mixon on the depth chart. Hence, Damen Pierce and Cam Akers both getting a lot of run with C.J. Stroud. And I'll call it the ones. C.J. had they were mixing a lot of guys in with C.J., both along the line and at receiver and at running back. So to call it them running with the ones, they were running with the one quarterback, C.J. Stroud, which I guess is the most important thing. But Tunsil participating in 11-on-11, Mixon back at practice, not participating in 11-on-11, but looks healthy. Christian Harris back at practice for like 30 minutes, and then he went back in the building because it looked like he tweaked something. I don't know how much clarity we're going to get on Harris's situation. I just hope he's ready for week one, because that is one of the position groups that's not so deep on this team. Like the next linebacker after Christian Harris and Azeez Al-Shire is Henry To'oTo'o, who looks better this year than he did last year. But that's not a tremendously high bar to clear. So that'll be interesting to see if the Texans are keeping an eye on the waiver wire or looking to bring a linebacker in. Christian Harris, that was his first practice since training camp began, and he didn't make it through the whole way. Didn't even make it halfway through the practice. So, so there's that. I think relative to Laramie Tunsil, probably the key thing there is Tunsil looked healthy. He looked good. He looks in great shape, like phenomenal shape. If any of you think like Tunsil not being out there, he hadn't been working, he's in great shape. He's going to be ready to go for the season. I thought what was interesting was Titus Howard did not play or did not practice on Sunday. Didn't play in the game, obviously, on Friday, but didn't practice on Sunday. Blake Fisher, who'd been getting all the reps at left tackle in Laramie's absence, was getting the reps with the ones at right tackle last night. So I think that's a sign right there, a very obvious sign, that Blake Fisher is the swing tackle for this team right now. That that when Laramie's out, he's playing left tackle with the ones. When Titus is out, he's playing right tackle with the ones. As Nick Caserio has pointed out multiple times, he started out, Blake Fisher did at Notre Dame, as a left tackle. And then then Joe Alt was the 5th overall pick in this draft. Notre Dame put him at left tackle, put Blake Fisher at right tackle. So Blake Fisher is actually, by playing right tackle, back at the position he's been much more familiar with over the last couple of years. But, excuse me, but doing a lot of talking, man, throughout camp. It is getting on my pipes. But yeah, Blake Fisher, I think that's significant, that if something were to happen to Laramie Tunsil or Titus Howard, and week one was this coming Sunday, I think Blake Fisher starts for this team. And so now you get some of the feel for why they drafted a tackle with a 2nd-round pick. I think there's a lot of people going, well, you're already all set at tackle. You got Titus, you got Laramie. Those guys missed some time with injuries last year. Blake Fisher's going to play some football for this team this year. Those top 4 rookies, Kamari Lassiter, who also still did not practice. I should mention that. He's got an ankle. Will Anderson didn't practice. But back to the rookies. Lassiter, whose injury I don't think is serious. Blake Fisher, Kalen Bullock, who continues to flash in games and at practice, and then Cade Stover, who was really good in the game on Friday and really, really good at practice on Sunday. Those guys are all going to play. And I think it says a lot about Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans and their scouting of those guys, that on a team that's as deep as any Texans team in a long time, as good as any Texans team in a long time, that those guys could play for this team and some significance. And Lassiter's going to start for this team. So that says a lot right there. So that's my report from practice on Sunday. Texans back at practice again on Tuesday. As far as winners and losers from the game on Friday in general, I do 4 of each. 4 winners. Let's start with the 4 winners from the Texans win over the Steelers. Number 4, Tank Dell. It was good to see Tank back. A Tank Dell touchdown is, to me, that is the salvo, the firework that says to me, football is back. I know I attended 10 different practices, watched a Hall of Fame game. We had a draft. We had an offseason and everything else. Nothing says football is back like a Tank Dell touchdown from C.J. Stroud. And that drive, that whole thing, in all seriousness, Tank Dell with a 22-yard punt return to set up the field position on that drive. And then on 3rd down, C.J. Stroud finding Tank for the touchdown where Tank breaks a tackle. I thought it was really cool. You guys know, if you listen to this podcast, I won't say I've been concerned about Tank, but I think it's noteworthy that he hasn't flashed as much in this camp as he has in previous training camps. So that was good to see. Like that. Okay, yeah, Tank's fine. As far as Tank returning punts, I'm cool with it. I'm cooler than most about regulars playing on special teams. And there's a lot of people that get real nervous about it. I'm okay with teams playing starters in spots on special teams. I guess my blueprint for Tank would be similar to what the Texans did with Will Fuller back in the day. Before we learned that Will Fuller was made of paper mache, the Texans would use Will Fuller in certain spots as a punt returner. If you remember back to 2016, go look it up. They played the Titans early in that season, in that Brock Osweiler season, I think in week 2. And Will Fuller won a game for the Texans with a long punt return. He returned a punt for a touchdown, won the game for the Texans, 27-20, I think the final score was. I could see them using Tank like that. The other thing that comes into play here, though, is roster spots, juggling the 53. They've got a lot of talented receivers. And Steven Sims is right now, if he were to make the team, it's likely only as a return guy. If there's a way that their return guy can also be a guy who's playing, 50 or 55 snaps a game on offense, then that's a more efficient use of the roster, perhaps. So we'll see. I mean, they've got a handful of guys that are on this team that can return. I think the problem is that other than Tank, they're all bubble guys right now to make the team. I think Steven Sims is a bubble guy. I think Robert Woods, despite the game that he had on Friday, is certainly on the bubble just because of the depth at wide receiver. And I think Desmond King is a guy who's returned some kicks before too, but he didn't even play in the game on Friday. And the Texans already cut him one time before in the last calendar year. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch play out. How do they handle special teams? Does the new kickoff rule and the new format of kickoff factor into that as well? I always thought Tank would be a good guy to have there. Now I don't know what to think of this new kickoff. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's boring and it feels just as dangerous as the one where guys are running down on the kick. So anyway, I say all that to say Tank Dell, number 4 winner. I'm counting him down. Number 3, Danielle Hunter. Only played 6 snaps, I think, if that, 2 series. But you got to feel right away for why the Texans gave this guy the money they gave him. And, man, he is so freaky. How his freakiness hasn't had more of a front burner thing, I think, is probably indicative of just how far off the grid Minnesota is, I mean, Danielle Hunter, the 2 plays that he made, one was a play that actually turned into a positive play for the Steelers, but through no fault of Danielle Hunter. It was a screen pass on the first play from scrimmage. And normally on a screen pass, they allow the defensive line to get in on the quarterback to suck them in, and then you screen it, and now the guy's got all kinds of room to run. Danielle Hunter was in there probably at least a second and a half faster than Justin Fields would hope he was in there. I mean, that first step of Danielle Hunter is remarkable. And then the sack that he had a little bit later, basically just a one-arm pull down of Justin Fields. Danielle Hunter's going to be, I'm not breaking any news here, he's going to be a big problem for other teams. 16 and a half sacks last year. Looks to be in great shape. Loves playing in this defense. This is a defense that really lends itself more to him getting opportunities to get after the passer, more so, according to Danielle Hunter, more so than the defense he played in Minnesota. And again, he had 16 and a half sacks in that defense. So Danielle Hunter, number 3. Number 2, I'm going outside the game for this one. Number 2, Cal McNair. Cal McNair winner. And it's not because he is the owner of one of the up-and-coming football teams in the league. It's not because he made one of the best coaching hires in the NFL in the last several years and in this city, in the history of this city, in D'Amico Ryans. It's because Cal McNair shotgunned a beer with Luke Combs on stage at the Luke Combs concert on Saturday and punted the can into the crowd. And if you listen to Payne and Pendergast, I had the exclusive on the behind the scenes with this thing, okay? Have it straight from a source that may or may not be married to Cal McNair. That couple things. One, maybe 3 things. One, Cal did not know what shotgunning a beer was before he shotgunned that beer. which makes it all the more impressive that he volunteered to do something that he not only had never done, but didn't know existed. I find this hard to believe. I have a feeling maybe Cal had seen it done before and just didn't know that that's what it was called. But Cal went to the University of Texas. He played football at the University of Texas. I still find it hard to believe he didn't know what a shotgun was, but that's what I was told by Hannah McNair. Second thing I was told, Luke Combs wanted the team to all shotgun beers. If you watch the video footage, there were would look to be maybe a dozen players up on stage, something like that, including CJ Stroud. He wanted all the players to shotgun a beer. Cal stepped in and said, these guys they're training right now. We're trying to win a Super Bowl, Luke. I will do this for them. Now, Cal didn't shotgun 12 beers. He didn't shotgun one for each guy. That would have been a scene. However, he did shotgun a beer, something he had never done before for the team. That's called sacrifice, baby. And so Cal McNair making the sacrifice for the team by shotgunning a beer on stage. So the third thing is the punt, not planned, totally organic. Major respect for Cal McNair punting that beer into the stands because he was in jeans and cowboy boots with a cowboy hat on. I could be dressed in sweats with cleats and a T-shirt, and I might miss the ball or the can if I was trying to punt it on stage. And Cal connected with it, man. He got good hang time on that thing. And the funniest thing was Tommy Townsend was standing right next to him, so he got to critique it. And that's my number one winner in this whole thing. Back to the game for a second. By the way, Cal, good job. Good job by you. Number one, Tommy Townsend. We got to show off our new punter in front of our old punter, Cam Johnston. Cam Johnston was good for the Texans. He was good. He was solid. Good 3 years for the Texans. I'm enjoying the Tommy Townsend experience way more than Cam Johnston, who, by the way, hit Tank Dell out of bounds on that punt return. It was a pussy-ish move, Cam Johnston. So I was glad that Tommy Townsend, that we got to show our hot new punter off in front of our old haggard ex-wife punter, Cam Johnston. That was kind of fun that we got to do that. And Tommy Townsend topped it off, cherry on top of the sundae, when he ran up to Quez Watkins, the punt returner for the Steelers, and said, "Catch the ball, bitch." Beautiful. Just an all-time Texans moment right there. Our new punter telling a camp body from the Steelers to catch the ball, bitch. And he's right. Quez Watkins, catch the ball, bitch. So that was cool. A lot of good punting stories going on. Punting beer cans at Luke Combs concerts, punting muffed returns, and calling the guy a bitch. Good stuff. Tommy Townsend, number one winner on a Ring of Honor track for the Texans right now. In all seriousness, that dude can kick. The hang time on his kicks, holy smokes. All right, so those are my winners. Let's get to four losers real quick, and I'm going to go get breakfast. John Mechie, number 4. He has continued to just not show up in these games. He had a game against Pittsburgh that was extremely similar, disturbingly similar to the game that he had against the Bears in the Hall of Fame game. One inconsequential catch with a drop to go with it. And the problem is he's been dropping the ball in practice now, too. According to everybody who had eyes on practice up in Ohio, he had some real issues catching the football. John Mechie's in a battle right now, man. And that wide receiver room, man, Xavier Hutchinson showed up in that first game against the Bears with 5 catches. Robert Woods showed up in this game with 4 catches. The problem for Mechie is that literally every other receiver, aside from the whichever Yankee twin is still in camp, I think it's Jaden, every other receiver is flashing in these games. Johnny Johnson had a couple of catches. Xavier Hutchinson had 5 catches in the last game and a 19-yard end around in this game. I mentioned Robert Woods. I'm just going off the top of my head here. Ben Skoranek has made a few plays. Steven Sims had a catch and run for 14 or 15 yards in that game. So Quintez Cephas made a couple plays in that game, at least more plays than John Mechie has made. I love John Mechie. I hope he makes the team. It's a phenomenal story, but I think that John Mechie is in real trouble right now. And I'll segue that into Mechie 4, Damen Pierce at 3. And Damen Pierce, it's unlike Mechie, Damen Pierce, I think it's this, at least in this particular game. Oh, I got to flip it to losers. Sorry about that. If you're on the stream, 4 losers. There we go. Damen Pierce is less his fault. The blocking was not great in front of him. The play calling, they ran everything to the right side. I think the better blocking was going on the left side on Friday night. But at some point, you got to look like you're acclimated to this system. Cam Akers was getting almost the same blocking Damen Pierce was. And at least you could look at Cam Akers and go, okay, it feels like he's in tune with what's going on offensively. It feels like he's got that sense of what's going on with the line and reading the room and kind of knowing the dance steps. Damen Pierce is dancing like I dance, like Steve Martin dances in The Jerk. No rhythm, no rhythm. So, like Mechie, I'm rooting for Damen Pierce. I love Damen Pierce. He's one of my favorite Texans. I just think that my prediction with Damen Pierce and with John Mechie is that if they have another game like they did in these first two games, or in the case of Pierce, the one game he's played, because Pierce didn't play against the Bears, if they continue to play the same way in the preseason that they have so far, I think Nick Casario's got no choice but to start making some phone calls about both guys and just seeing what you can get for them. Get a day 3 pick, one of those trades where you get a 5th for Damen Pierce and a 6th, whatever it is. I don't know what the market looks like. I just know that there's probably some teams out there that look at Damen Pierce in 2022 and say, well, he'd probably look a lot like that in our system. He's just not a guy that maybe fits the Shanahan system, despite the ferocious work he's putting in to do so. It might just not be for Damen Pierce. Mechie, I don't know. It's a system problem with him. It's just whatever's going on in practice in these workouts. And I promise you, he has looked more explosive in this training camp. It's not translating into games. Here's the thing. If they cut both those guys, they're going to get picked up quickly. Damen Pierce will get picked up quickly based on his rookie year and the physical talent, and he's a good guy. Like, you don't have to worry. You bring in Damen Pierce, he's not agitating for 15 or 20 touches. Similarly, John Mechie, great dude, and a former second-round pick. Someone's going to pick him up, because the worst case is you just cut him. If he's not cutting it, you just let him go. It's a free roll if you get these guys. These guys are too talented physically to, that somebody's not going to pick them up. There's no way John Mechie or Damen Pierce, you cut them and they squeak through and you pick them back up on the practice squad. Let me put it that way. That ain't happening with either guy. So, and I know Nick Casario knows this, and he's probably already doing this, just to see what the market is. So I think both of those guys are candidates to be traded. I would be shocked if one of the two of them, barring them starting to perform, if they both start performing, they'll be Houston Texans. But if it keeps looking the way it's looking, at least one, if not both, will get traded, I think. All right, so those are two, and they're in two super competitive rooms right now. I mean, there's going to be some players that get cut from both of those positions that get picked up quickly. It just may happen to be the two of them, Mechie and Pierce. All right, so that's number 4. Number 3, Mechie and Pierce. Number 2, Juice Scruggs a little bit, but really the offensive line, just the run blocking has not been good. I'm not confident that they're going to be able to move the football on the ground at this point. Now, maybe it looks different when Joe Mixon is in there. Maybe it looks different when you've got the full complement of your offensive line in there, where you've got they've yet to play Laramie, Kenyon Green at left guard, Juice at center, Shaq Mason at right guard, and Titus Howard at right tackle. They haven't played those 5 together at any point in training camp yet. Maybe it looks different. They need to get them on the field together at some point here to get ready for the start of the season. But the running game has not looked good. Scruggs had a couple snaps I think he'd love to have back in the game on Friday, including a sack that was given up that was kind of him and the Reed kid playing right guard. But, Juice has been so far, I think. Kenyon, I think, has looked pretty good. So that's number 2 loser. Last one, loser, the internet. The internet's a loser. Not the whole internet, okay? I don't want to piss off the entire internet. But the part of the internet I'm talking about are the people, mostly Bills fans, some Viking fans, some trolls, and some combination of all 3 of those, who take every Stefon Diggs story or every Stefon Diggs clip and turn it into, oh, look at Stefon Diggs, same old Diggs. Remember when Stefon Diggs got hit by Jimmy Ward and that led to a fight at Texans camp, and the story got twisted into Stefon Diggs got into a fight, and it wasn't even true. Like, Diggs got hit by Jimmy Ward and walked away. It was Derek Stingley and Dalton Schultz that were the ones that were fighting. And then on Friday, after Tank Dell's touchdown, TV shoots over to the Texans bench. Stefon Diggs is having a very animated conversation with CJ Stroud. What do the Bills, Vikings, and trolls do? Same old Diggs. Diggs is angry. Hope you're enjoying this, Texans fans. Y'all are losers, man. Y'all are losers, taking 15 seconds worth of video and creating narratives and storylines that aren't true. Now, maybe it happens down the road. Maybe Diggs does get dissatisfied. Maybe he does have a shelf life that's shorter than the 1 year the Texans have reduced his contract to, which both sides are cool with, by the way. Maybe it happens. But when it happens, report that. That ain't it. That was Diggs and Stroud having a very productive conversation on the sideline. So my last loser is the internet. All right? Again, not the whole internet. I hate that one bad apple has to spoil the bunch, but that corner of the internet is ruining the whole internet. Other than this podcast. This podcast is the only shining beacon having to do with the internet. So those are my 4 winners and 4 losers. We got a big mailbag coming up. I'd imagine y'all are going to have a lot of questions about position battles at training camp. I'm ready to talk about them. Again, if you want to email me, houmailbag@gmail.com, houmailbag@gmail.com. And a reminder again to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast as well. Hit that subscribe button. That really, really helps out the cause, man. I'm really enjoying this. We are H-Town made right now. That's the playoff banner in our studio right there, to go with the Twin Peaks chicks photobombing me right there. How about that? All right, I'm done. I'm going to go eat breakfast. I appreciate all of you tuning in, downloading the podcast, subscribing it, telling friends, all good. We'll have a mailbag tomorrow. We'll have a practice report tomorrow. 3 practices, 3 practice reports. So it's a super busy week for the Utopia Football Podcast. Appreciate all of you tuning in. Have a spectacular day. Let's get it this week, people. Make it a great one. I'll see you tomorrow.